Our next appointment is Board of Elections. Paul Adams, the Director, and Jim Kramer, the Deputy Director, are here today to present their budget for 2022. Welcome.
Thanks for having us here today. It's always a pleasure to come over to the administration building and let you guys know what's going on over at the Board of Elections, not only just what's going on with our budget. So the first thing that I have here on our first slide is just kind of some overview things to think about for next year's elections, 2022. We're looking at two countywide elections, the primary and the general election next year. We're going to have gubernatorial and U.S. Senate races on the ballot, which are outside of a presidential election. This is the next largest election that we typically see as election officials. We are expecting that the primary election will be a very busy primary election, as well as the general election. And so we're expecting higher turnouts in both of those. We're also expecting that we're going to see a number of individuals, even as the pandemic ends here, that are going to be comfortable with voting by mail or voting early. As we've seen since what's called no-fault absentee was approved back in 2006, we've seen the number of people that want to vote early, either way, either in person early or by the mail, continue to rise. We expect that we're going to see a number of people that in the last year or so that have chosen to vote early are going to say, you know what, I like that, I'm going to continue to do that. So we're going to see some potential increase costs due to that for mailing, as well as staffing individuals at the Board of Elections to handle in-person absentee voting at the Board of Elections, which has become very popular. So moving on specifically to our budget request here, I'm not going to go line by line, but what I am going to do is I'm going to address the specific accounts where we are seeking additional funds in for 2022. The first item, employee salaries. The majority of this is to cover the increased staffing that we will need for a gubernatorial election. The next item, the board member salaries, that is an increase as required by Senate Bill 296 that was passed in 2018. There's increases for board member salaries over the next, I believe, 8 more years. It's going to go to 2028, where there's an annual increase for those, as well as other office holders as well. And then the PERS increase, that's just the required 14% that goes along with the employee salaries. Next, moving into election expenses, we have additional $15,000 in supplies and materials. Those are mostly for our election packets, kits, those kind of items specifically related to election day and poll worker supplies. One of the things that we had this year was we didn't need as much because we didn't have a full county election this past May. Next year, we're going to be having a full county election for the primary and the general, as well as in these types of elections, we do provide workers with additional supplies just to make sure they don't run out, because they're going to use more supplies in these types of elections. In addition to that, a part of this additional cost is something that, with our new voting system that we implemented back in 2019, the ballot activation cards, those actually now have to come out of this account. So part of that also is going to be an increase of the number of ballot cards we're going to order for the polling locations for next year. The next item, computer system software increase. We're looking at $26,000 there. A lot of these have to do with security requirements that we've had from the Secretary of State. So you can see here that we are looking at increased security costs that we have from having additional security systems at Gargis Hall, which is our other location, as well as other requirements such as Office 365 and some other programs that the Secretary of State has required that we put in place. In addition to that, election systems and software is our election vendor. There are some increased costs there as well for licensing fees for our equipment.
So the Secretary of State is, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the Secretary of State's making these requirements, but the state's not providing funding for these mandates.
That is correct. When some of these requirements first came around back in 2018, 2019, there were initially funds that were made available that we were able to use grant funding for. But then, once that ended, then these things were continued that we need to maintain and continue to pay for.
I just always felt this was the responsibility of the state, but, more unfunded mandates.
Yes. The next item here, contract purchase services increase. A number of these items just have to do with also additional maintenance fees that we are having. Last year, due to some grant funding that we were able to secure, we were able to purchase some new equipment, specifically new equipment to help us properly and efficiently, securely process mail absentee voting in large quantities. Grant funding that came from the state, the federal government, helped purchase a lot of these pieces of equipment, but those all have kind of ongoing fees that go along with maintenance and licensing for those. Next year, we will need to make sure that we have all of those in operation. These would be those fees that would go along with those pieces of equipment. Then the last item here on this slide is $80,000 increased for booth worker salaries. Once again, this year, we did not have a full county election in May, so the amount of money we needed in that account was less. But next year, having 2 full county elections, we will need to have that increase in poll worker salaries. Moving on to the next slide.
How's that, if you don't mind me interrupting, how's the recruitment going, just trying to find workers for this upcoming election? How'd that process work out?
So, yes, as Jim said, it's a challenging process. What has been even more challenging this election, I mean, we're getting to the point now to where actually now that the cases of COVID have begun to come down, we finally are getting a good number of people to contact us and sign up to be poll workers.
Good.
The challenging part about it is the fact that the Secretary of State required that we bump all of our classes up because they wanted to make sure that going into, let's say, the last 2 weeks before the election, that you have a whole bunch of poll workers trained and you could see that there was a problem. Well, we bumped all those classes up, so the initial classes we had, we didn't have full classes because people were concerned. They were hesitant to serve as poll workers. So now we do have a good number of people that are coming in, but now we're having to schedule and staff a whole bunch of new emergency classes over this last week and a half just to get all those people trained. So I feel confident we will have enough people to open the polls and be staffed fully. It's just, as Jim mentioned, it's kind of a challenging situation where at the beginning, because of COVID, it created a lot of hesitancy, and now all of a sudden we're having all of these people come in at once, and we have to be able to train them and get them prepared for the election. Here on this page.
And Paul, I understand
yes.
that wage is set, they pay a set fee, so if anybody's interested in doing that, this is where you make your shameless plug, right?
Yes. So if you are interested in being a poll worker, you'll make a minimum of $150. Different positions pay a little bit more, but if you are interested in serving as a poll worker, please contact our office. That number is 326-5906. Mary in our office is the one that's kind of coordinating the current new poll workers that are coming in. So if you are interested, please give us a call. Like I said, we're adding classes, so we're going to have space for you. So please come out and help us if you can.
And I understand that wage or pay for the day is set by the state, so that's not, they're not coming in negotiating how much it is. It's a set fee, correct?
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is that the wage itself is set by, it is set by the state, but the state sets it at federal minimum wage. So you take the, amount of time that an employee works or a poll worker works during the day, and that is actually set by the federal minimum wage. So if the federal minimum wage were ever to go up, the last time that happened back, I think in 2006 or 2007, there was an increase in poll worker pay. One of the things we can do, though, is occasionally we'll pay you a little bit more for things like going to training class, if you pick up supplies, those kind of things. So there's different counties where you might see a little bit of difference in the pay, but it is generally set by the state, and unfortunately, it's tagged to minimum wage.
Okay, thank you.
Miscellaneous rental increase, that's for just the additional polling locations that we're going to have. We didn't have to pay for the rental this past primary because we didn't have the whole county open. We will for this coming election. Record Center expense increase of $300. That's just additional documentation that we're going to have to send to the Records Department next year. Travel increase of $1,500. That is mostly because the regular conferences and meetings that we have as election officials are now moving back to being in person as opposed to the online and Zoom meetings that we had previously had. And then finally here, printing and advertising increase of $50,000. That is also just to be prepared for the upcoming gubernatorial election, both the primary and general election. So those are my general comments about the budget request that we have made for 2022. I did want to mention a couple other things in my presentation here. One of the things that we're always told when we go to election officials conferences and we have county commissioners who come speak to us, they say, look, if you have something coming up and you know it's going to cost a lot of money, you got to give us enough notice. Don't spring something on us at the last second. So one of the things that I did want to discuss with you was at some point here, sometime before the next presidential election, we would be looking to replace our electronic poll books. Those electronic poll books were initially approved for purchase back in 2014. At this point, they are using an outdated operating system. In order to look at different types of new equipment, these systems have to be certified by the state. We've had different people say, well, you can go get a tablet from here or there, and you can go ahead and use those things, so this is a better quality, whatever. We can only use whatever is certified by the state. There are a few different vendors out there that do provide certified election equipment for counties here in Ohio. And those costs, our Deputy Director Jim has looked into some of those costs over the last year or so, and they range anywhere from that $400,000 to $500,000 amount to replace those poll books. So at some point, we would be looking to do that before the presidential election, just due to the age of the equipment and the fact that technology has moved a lot farther along. Yeah, the security is better. The quality of the signatures. I know I've talked to a number of people where just like when you go to a grocery store and you sign on that signature pad, sometimes it doesn't quite look like your signature. And that occasionally does happen on our poll books. We instruct our poll workers that if there is a question about someone that I can't make out that signature and I'm concerned, we do tell them, well, we give you pads. You can have them write on a pad to compare a signature just to make certain if there's a concern. But certainly technology has moved farther forward in being able to capture those signatures and at least appear better for the voter experience. So that is something that we would be looking at sometime before the 2024 presidential election. And the last item I just wanted to mention to the board is Commissioner Hung had mentioned, there are different things going on with construction around the board. We have a large number of things that are going to be happening after this election. But we do have some things that have kind of been happening with our Dropbox, other items that are being taken care of. And I just wanted to let the commissioners know that we've had a very great working relationship with Dan Gross. He's come over, he's worked very, very well with us, and we're very appreciative of how much he's come over and tried to make sure that this all gets taken care of in a pretty expedient fashion.
So my next question, the Dropbox then, that's getting fixed?
Yes, actually, well, it's all finished now. The only thing that needs to be, they got to put up a railing because there's a grade difference. So they have some cones up there now, so nobody trips. But other than that, as soon as they get that railing up, it'll be completely finished. So we're very happy about that.
Commissioners for the effort that you put into getting us these upgrades. They've been sorely needed over the years.
Well, we were working on that with you guys in the spring, and I'm glad we were able to get that done this year. Do you want to just give the public just a brief overview on what's happening in this construction project that's coming up?
Sure.
The remodel project?
Sure. So in the next few months after this election, we're not going to do anything to interrupt this election, but we are going to be putting up secured areas inside the building. There's going to be counters with windows, so when voters come in to the Board of Elections, there's going to be a secure window for them to be able to either register to vote or vote. We're going to be getting some new carpet in the building, which has been sorely needed over the last 10 or 20 years or so. That's going to be an important improvement for us at the board, as well as finishing up things here with the drop box. A lot of people are continuing to use that. It's right outside of my office window, so I hear when the door closes, so I know how often it is being used. We're also taking care of some of the overhang issues on the outside of the building. They've taken down the one overhang where the pillars are collapsing. That's been removed so that that's not a continued hazard, as well as I did talk with Dan Gross about getting the lighting fixed in the parking lot. There's a couple areas in the back of the parking lot that needs to be fixed. In a large election like next year, this year we probably won't see voters that need that, but going into next year's election, we're going to have a lot of people in the parking lot, and it's going to be very appreciative that that's all lit properly at the Board of Elections.
Great, thank you. And I understand you had a recent retirement of Sandy Muth, and we want to thank her for her service and wish her well in her retirement. How many years was she with us?
She started
Too long.
Right, right.
because Sandy started in the 98 or, and then before that she worked for Dorothy Essex, I believe, as the county recorder.
Yeah, so I want to wish her a happy retirement.
Okay, I'll pass that along next time I see you.
Okay,
So
Commissioner?
what's the absentees at right now for this election? I know they're low. What do you think?
Yeah, right now it's
Ballpark it, I don't need exact.
it's probably just under 5,000
Really?
at this point. And in these types of elections, it's very much contingent upon what's going on in different communities' races. So we are expecting that in this election, the highest turnout's probably going to be Vermillion, because they have a contested mayor's race in Vermillion and some other controversial issues that are going on there. But that's really what pushes it. But generally, as Jim mentioned, we're just a little under 5,000.
What about the, what's your estimation for general this year, do you think?
The total turnout?
Yeah, what are you guys thinking? Because it was like, what, 158 or something like that for last year?
Yeah. Jim is usually a lot better at determining the
Ballpark,
turnout.
it's,
I mean,
because based on absentee ballots, you guys usually are pretty good at coming close.
yeah, I mean, I would imagine we're probably going to be maybe around 20, 25%.
I would hope for 25.
25% turnout?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering. I think it'd be interesting. It's gonna be interesting this year. So
Oh, yes.
you guys will probably know by what 9:30 today, right? That night.
That's what our board members hope for.
I'm getting the feeling, though, our next year's primary will be our largest primary
Oh,
in a
yeah.
long time.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gonna be. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why, in the budget, we were thinking about that the primary election next year will probably be one of the biggest gubernatorial primaries we've ever
And
seen.
speaking for 2 out of the 3 up here, we're glad we're not running.
That's why I want to make sure everything's in place for more in '24. I want to make sure we got a nice, smooth election for you guys. See, I'm trying to think about you.
I appreciate the love. Well, it's good you're taking the hit for us, though.
Thank you. I'm the first wagon out west, so look out. I wanted to drill down a little bit on the poll books, though.
Yeah.
Does the state make recommendations on vendors for poll books? And is there maybe a window of time where we should at least go out and test the market? I'm just wondering if these things aren't going to get more expensive the more we get down the road, if it wouldn't be wiser to do it sooner than later.
Yeah, so I'll say 2 things about that. First, the state legislature has required now, it was a law passed relatively recently, that all poll book vendors in Ohio have to go through the Board of Voting Machine Examiners. And they've actually changed the name of that entity for that purpose, they all have to be certified. So the state doesn't necessarily come down and make a recommendation that this is a vendor that you should go with, but what they do is they come down and say, these are the following vendors that are certified in the state of Ohio. And at this point, I believe there's only 3 or 4 that are certified in the
There's
state.
three at this point that I would recommend.
That are certified. Now, in terms of that cost, yes, actually, that's, when I gave this presentation to Jim to look over before I sent it off to Teresa, he actually had me update the portion where I had cost estimate for replacement between 400 to 500. He said, you need to add the word current in front of that, because obviously, yes, as we go further, those costs could definitely increase, and I think some of the quotes that we've been looking at were from earlier this year.
So just to walk through a hypothetical here, I guess my concern is that the costs would be increasing if we push it down the road. If the legislature has already determined who could be the eligible vendors once they go through this verification or certification process, would it make sense for us to try to go out there with an RFP and at least try to see what the marketplace looks like? And if we did so, would it make sense to pilot them when the folks on the first wagon going out west are out there in 2022 and get ready for that really important election in 2024?
Typically, when we look at new election equipment, such as like a poll book or even our voting equipment, we typically look to do those in smaller elections. So we certainly would not look to do that in the general election of next year. We could potentially look to do that maybe in a smaller primary election, such as next year, or the municipal elections of 2023 would be a good time to do that, yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know, that's something I guess I'll discuss with my colleagues, but it might be worth entertaining, trying to see where we're at right now on this, because we know we got to do it, right?
Yes.
So we know we want to do it before 2024, right?
Yes.
So, and yeah, maybe it would be best, I would think, probably to pilot it in 2023 then, if you don't think it's good to pilot in 22.
Yeah, I think 23 would be a good time to do that. Also, just due to the size of our county, us being the 9th largest in the state, we are large enough to where if I call one of these vendors and say, I want you to come in and I want you to give us a demonstration at our office, they will come here and they will give us a full demonstration to do that, so we can see all of those before we make any kind of determination.
In the past 6 months, I've been kind of investigating this.
Can we
and
step to the microphone?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yes. For about the past 6 months, I've been investigating these, because I've worked a lot with these, and have been calling other counties, getting their feedback. And even the current vendor that we have now, they do no longer produce that model. They have a completely different model. But it is one item, though, that when we did go to it, back 6 years ago, that these really increased our accuracy and our accounting of the ballots.
Yeah, because, I mean, Windows 8 is not going to cut it, so we need to be moving on from there. But that's probably a discussion that I'd like to have with, my colleagues, because I just think if we're going to do this, they at least go out for the RFP, see what comes back in 2022, and get ready to use them in 2023. And maybe get them at a better price than we would get a couple years down the road.
Yeah.
Do we know any supply chain issues? Have any of the other boards talked about any supply chain issues with the vendors? Because the
I
technology.
haven't heard of any issues with supply chain at this point. I mean, one of the good things is such as our ballot cards and our paper ballots that we have, those are required by law to be printed and made here in the state of Ohio. So even if there was some kind of issue, they wouldn't have to go too far. But no, we haven't been affected by that at this point.
And just finally, so we did address the issue with, I believe it was the company called Midwest, in the absentee ballots supposedly going out but weren't going out. Could you just clarify how we addressed that?
Yes, so the board reviewed after the election, that situation. We are required by law to put out to bid our ballot contracts in years where we believe that the cost of the election is going to be potentially over $25,000 for the purchase of ballots themselves. So obviously next year, that's going to be the case. So what we did was we put together an RFP for this election, the 2021 general, as well as both the primary and general of next year. And that company was not the successful bidder. The board chose to go with a different vendor that we are using for this election. And this kind of goes back to what we're talking about with the poll books. Like, we like to try things out in the smaller elections. So with this new company, we're trying them out in this election so that once we get into next year, we've been already at least through one election with them.
And they were the successful vendor for other counties in the state as well, too? We're not the only county using this vendor?
That is correct. IVS is the vendor for a number of other counties in the state of Ohio. One of the things that was of interest to us was the fact that we are the largest county that they have agreed to take on. When you're a printing vendor in this state and you take on a place like Cuyahoga or some very, very large county, that puts us in a difficult position because that's their largest customer. So they're going to try to do what they can to take care of them, and we had that issue with two of our previous vendors, where we'd be on phone calls with them, and they'd say, well, you know, we got Cuyahoga, and we got Summit, we got Franklin, they're ahead of you because they're bigger. And that's, in this case, this vendor that we have, they do have other counties, but from my understanding, we are the largest county that they have.
And how are the new machines working? Because, I mean, wasn't last year kind of the first year that we fully had them implemented?
So we implemented in 2019, for both the primary and general there, moving into 2020. We only used them once in 2020 because we didn't have the polls open in the primary of last year. But what was very nice to see was there was a very easy transition for the voters, because the system, while there is that different piece that you have a ballot card you hold that you have to put into a scanner, the rest of the process is very, very, very similar from the voter's perspective, as well as to our poll workers. It was very easy to make that transition, and at this point, I've had a lot of good comments from voters as well as poll workers that that transition went very well.
Good.
So you mentioned you've been upgraded to
Yes, we did do an upgrade this past summer. We had talked with our election vendor about a security upgrade that they were providing to us. So we did set aside time to do that this summer and upgrade all of that election equipment over the summer.
Good.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Moore, anything further?
No.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for coming out today and doing your presentation. It was nice to see you guys, as
Nice to see you
always.
too.
Good to see you
All
too.
right, thank you.
Okay, stop by and visit us sometime.
I was planning. Okay, welcome back. We have the treasurer, Dan Telerik, here for his presentation, and Lisa Dawson, his chief deputy. Welcome, Mr. Treasurer.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us here. And I'm glad you didn't give all the money to the Board of Election on their way out. Our 22 budget is the same as 21, except for 2.55%. We put some increase in there because the contract's going to run out for our union, and in anticipation of a postage increase, which went 5.5% in August, that we're going to need a little bit extra money. Our delinquent taxes account, we're fine with that in our escrow. Besides that, questions?
Always a pleasure. And always appreciate.
Did I make that right?
You made it in 64 seconds.
Oh,
Sorry.
Lord to go.
You said 63.
The only other thing I could throw out, Casey, is we also put $1 million for investment earnings. We might get a little bit more next year. Things have turned around. We did 1.3 this year. By the hair of our chinny chin chin, we're going to hit that 1.3. Next year, I honestly believe we'll get a little bit more than a million, but,
There's an
I'm
extra
well
30
known for
million there. I figured
lowballing.
You guys might make a little bit more with the extra 30 we're getting from DC, maybe.
Well, we might be able to do that
Yeah.
then. But any questions? Well, thank you.
Well, how's
Let-
everybody doing down in the treasurer's office?
Pardon me?
How's everybody doing down in the treasurer's office?
I believe we're doing well. You better say that. But, no.
Well, thank
No,
you.
we're doing well. We sent out the delinquent tax bills, which is a third billing we send out, which we're not obligated to do. But we try to send them to people that had a mistake somewhere along the line, because if you don't pay your taxes by the end of October, the auditor, now remember this, the auditor may publish your name.
No.
And we always like to talk about the fact that people could be threatened with a foreclosure with the sheriff or for the prosecutor. But holy how, if you say their name might end up in a newspaper, they come in and pay their taxes. And a lot of time, it's a mistake that maybe a mortgage company didn't pay us what they should have for them.
I had a question. When last year with the COVID-19, you had a drop box downstairs in the lobby?
Yes, and we still do, and I thank the commissioners for letting us keep that there. It's been a home run,
I was gonna ask
absolutely
how
a
it was-
home run.
How it was working for you. So you're still
know-
continuing to do that?
It's still down there where every day we go down there and check it a couple of times a day. Lisa goes down and makes sure in the morning, at lunch, and before we leave. And I can't tell you how many, the people really, really like that. Because you mean I don't have to get in that elevator and come up? I don't have to stand in a line? Because let's face it, we will give you a receipt if you come up to the office, but let's face it, if you got a check,
Right.
you're
receipt.
going to have a receipt with that. But no, that's worked extremely well. I bet you 0.0006 persons ever complained about that being down there. Everybody else just, really liked it.
And just so the public knows, we have some people that just absolutely want to come up and walk up to that counter in your office. Are they allowed to do that now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We opened up in August.
Okay, great.
We
Thank
opened up
you.
in August. So we've been, rocking and rolling since then.
For those behind on their taxes, I know you always try to work out payment plans with people.
Absolutely.
Can you kind of walk us through a little bit about how the payment plan process works, or?
Lisa, you wanted to, I can do that, but well, Lisa does that a little bit more than I,
Sure.
Well, go ahead. I want to hear this myself. No, I really know what this does.
And I might add, you guys look very cute in your Browns gear.
Thank you.
Brown's playing today?
The 20% payment plan is the only formal agreement that's recognized by ORC. And when we enroll a taxpayer onto that, we ask that they pay 1/5 or 20% of the previous year's delinquency, plus pay their base tax that becomes due every February and July. Dan said many times over that you really, really kind of have to work to get us to foreclose on you, because we do. We try real hard to work with taxpayers to accommodate them.
So you get the 20%, and then the remainder of that balance gets added on to your normal balance, what, over a period of 2 or 3 years?
It's a 2.5.
2.5 year.
Payment cycle, yes, sir.
Okay.
No, we've always told everybody, we don't want your house, we don't want
right.
your farm, we don't want your church or your business, and, you know, we want your money. And if, the law isn't a rail, if we can, you know, we try to work it, as Lisa said, we bend over backwards, and you have to make an extreme effort before we start the foreclosure. And I know people say, why don't you do more foreclosure? Well, you know, it's very, very expensive for foreclosures.
And just so folks were familiar with, you know, because they see that when we collect these unpaid taxes, that they think that that all goes to our general fund. And if you can acclimate the folks about how the majority of this money certainly goes to the schools.
I'll let the auditor tell, you know, go through that, because that's where the, yeah, but 1.6 mils is our inside millage.
Right.
For Lorraine County, which, by the way, is the 88th lowest. 88th lowest of inside millage.
We need to get one, how do we get back to 89? Or, There is 90. I know, I'm
I
just messing
believe
with
that's
the
part,
treasure.
that's in the Constitution.
Oh, is it?
Honestly, I believe it is. You could ask the auditor, that's the person who actually takes care of the
Right,
millage and whatever.
Right.
I'm not passing the buck, but sometimes I know a little bit.
No, it's just,
And a little knowledge is very dangerous,
I still think
remember
you're standing
that.
next to that .0006 person. She probably want to go downstairs and get.
Is
the
she here?
envelopes. Yeah, right there. She's right to your left.
No, I think there were 3 of them
Oh,
that
really?
were
It really
very,
was?
very upset about, but
Oh, really?
about that. But no, it's worked out extremely well, seriously. I wish we would have thought about that years ago.
okay, well, I know you work closely with, I believe, Chris Panowski over in the auditor's office, and so just appreciate all the work that you do.
Well, we try. We do the best we can, and I believe we are. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, off to Cleveland.
Wait till we get the thumbs up. Okay, welcome back. We have, for the next presentation, our county recorder, Mike Duran, and his chief deputy, Jeff Bear. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. We're here this morning to present our budget request for 2022.
All right, as you can see, the majority of everything that we get from the general fund goes to salaries. The top is all the employees that work for the office, my salary, PERS, then other, that's actually detailed on the next page. That's mostly,
We have some supplies, postage, and travel that we cover under that. Nothing's changed, and some of that usually goes back.
and then,
There was a 3% increase also that we put in on the salary commissioners for that number. We are presently in negotiations for our CBA, so that hasn't finished yet, so we were just putting that in as an estimate.
Okay.
Okay.
then,
And then that's just our line by line for our general fund breakdown with the salaries.
and then, looks like year-to-date, we're at a little over 1.4 million. Our monthly average revenue is 161,000. And we're forecasting 1.5 million for '22. It's a little hard to forecast with our office because of the volatility of the real estate market right now. 2020 and 2021 were higher than 2019 and before as to the number of transactions, and the number of transactions greatly affects how much revenue we will bring in. So we do expect it to be relatively higher than normal this year and next year until if foreclosures start hitting it again, then we'll be higher. And then we expect if once those go through, then it'll probably settle down to a transaction number more similar to 2018, 2019. Then if the state changes our fees, then, but that'll be something to worry about in 23, 24.
And like the recorder said, we are giving a conservative estimate for that. Right now, that year-to-date was just up to the end of September, so we've got October, November, and December that we're gonna be bringing in revenue for the general fund. So that 1.875 is conservative. And there's just a breakdown of next year's forecast for '22. You'll see the 1.5 again being conservative, and then there's a 17,000 on there. That's a miscellaneous fee that's collected currently to the general fund for administrative fee of handling the Ohio Housing Trust Fund.
Which that's not listed on here, but another, roughly the same amount that goes into general fund also goes into the housing trust fund. So it's not listed on here, but there's roughly 3 million that we bring in, but half of that pretty much right off the bat goes straight to the Ohio Housing Trust Fund. This is just letting you guys know how our equipment fund works as well. That's where we pay for any, our system, supplies, those kind of things out of. That increase isn't an increase of, we're not increasing the amount that we're taking out. It's just because of when the budget increases, the amount that goes into the fund increases. So
Yeah, we increased it 13,100 for next year, mostly for contractual services. We're looking at covering some in-house indexing book projects that weren't completed last year. We're looking at a way to handle that in-house through our staff over the next few years, which is gonna take, I'll use specifically the mortgage and release book index project that didn't get finished last year. We've got images, they need to be indexed and then made searchable. So we're gonna try and accomplish this in-house. We're gonna put those images on a book at a time, and we'll have our staff, when they don't have a workload coming across the counter, working on that project.
and that replaces that last budget meeting, that 302,000 that we were looking at. We just figured out a way to bring that in-house instead of doing that way.
It's gonna be a lengthy process, but we think we can get it through. And there's just a breakdown of our line by line for what we're doing for our tech fund, our operating budget for next year.
Thank you for doing that. You put a lot of detail into this.
Yeah. And then this is just, that we're estimating to bring in 200,000 from recording fees. It's generated per the ORC, and it's $4 per, so every document that gets recorded, $4 goes into the equipment fund. And that's the day-to-day and special projects fund.
Right, so that breakdown would be half automatically goes to Ohio Housing Trust.
Yes.
We get our $4 from it. There's a 1% administrative fee, and then the remainder goes to the general fund off of all of our recording fees. That concludes.
Okay, do the commissioners have any questions?
Good job, gentlemen. Has your association indicated any legislative activities that are going on that are going to impact your office coming up?
House Bill 237 is still going on down there. They've made some changes in there. They've actually, Section 6, I believe, they are talking about using the American Recovery money to try and cover for what that House bill wants done. They want 40 years back of deeds, mortgages, and releases to be online and searchable.
Are you saying the state is going to use their recovery dollars?
The state is going to encourage us to use
Encourage
recovery
you
dollars
to
that
use
are
our-
consolidated to the,
Right.
to encourage us to ask you for
sounds
those.
familiar.
So we'll come up to you later for that, but that's a whole nother meeting.
Oh, you can save your trip.
Any idea what that could be? Have you done any projections in your office? What kind of financial impact that bill could just have on our office alone?
So right now, we've already had that book scanning project that we want to complete down there. Again, you know, it is the recorder's duty, the county's duty to make sure these records are permanent. I mean, that's just the gist of it. We've got to keep these permanent, so it's not if we do it, it's when we do it. And I think this is a good opportunity. With the current situation, we hit right in that language of the American Recovery money to cover this project. And I think we get those.
I was over at the Record Center. They got paper documents from 1824, which still holds today. I just wanted that to be said.
Wow.
Yeah, good luck turning the pages.
Oh, no, I was looking at names of the streets here in Elyria, because that's who was paying the bills back.
Unfortunately, our books are looked at every day.
Oh, I know.
You know,
And that's a great industry
Yeah.
that makes a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
We've got books down there that are severely crippled. Beat up, yeah.
Yeah.
Will you be able to put that number together?
We went through and got 3 quotes. We just finished up a meeting this morning. We're trying to do everything today.
Okay.
We just finished up another meeting, and we have decided on a vendor that we want to approach the commission about. I think it's the best approach, and we'll get the most bang for our buck, accomplishing what the recorder's office needs.
Yeah, because I think the more time we have to review something or consider something, the better. But any indication that legislation is going to pass? What's your association saying about it?
HB 237's been kind of ongoing. They had.
Is this a big Christmas tree bill? I mean, is there a bunch of stuff in it, or is it primarily affecting the recorder? I'd have
We
to
only
look it up.
focus on what's.
We only
Yeah.
focused on what has to do with us. I'm
Right.
not sure what other things are in there, but
I'll have to
Well,
look it up.
if you like an email from your association, forward it on to us with details
Okay.
on that.
I know we've had some come through the commission's.
Commissioners Association.
Too, that came through that Teresa forwarded, so if they're aware of it, we can definitely forward what's going on, the most current version of it to you.
Yeah, we just constantly get these unfunded mandates, but, I know that we need to take care of that. Could you just educate the public about, you have a lot of people who come into your office from the outside all the time, looking at your records, and, with COVID, the whole idea is to try to, space people out, not have people, touching the same documents, and people not in close proximity, but you literally have people, it's almost like your office suite leasing location or something, even though they come in and operate out of there every day. I don't think you're
yeah, if
charging
you
them to
were
be there.
If you were to go down to our office right now, you'd probably find we call the back area the library because it's full of books and the public's there all the time. It's not just usually we have the general public, they can come in and search as well, but the majority of people that are back there right now are people who are working for title companies, doing searches and searching through everything. So what happens is if we don't have these things online, and if for some reason we do have to shut down or limit space because of the pandemic, like what happened last year, we actually had to we had people scheduled so that to limit space, you could only have a certain number of people back there, and that increases the time on title searches, which increases it. When people are buying their homes and they want to get their title insurance, the title insurance company is not going to insure that title if they don't have those searches properly done. So then that just increases the amount of time that it takes to purchase property in the county. But if we were able to get those online and something like this happens again in the future, we would be more ready for it. They would be able to find all of these documents online, get everything ready, and if for some reason they can't find something online, we still have documents at the office. So we like to have everything covered.
I like to think it's going to encourage that e-filing, like the recorder said, which will in turn assist with the traffic up on the second floor going into the auditor's floor too, so.
I had a couple questions. So with this House bill, and you mentioned 40 years of records. I know, Mike, you had mentioned that when you came in, you updated and redid the website for the recorder's office. Are you, so it would be on your website? Are you guys set to receive it? Your website ready for it?
We've got a portion of it already on there now.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're taking we have our website already, and then we have, within our website is our hosting service, which is actually hosted elsewhere, and it's through COT Systems. And the program that we use is ready to accept these documents once we get them scanned in and set up. There's two different ways to index documents. One of them is with an online index book format, and the way that format works is, this is with the older documents we generally use. You'll have an image of the index book, so it'll be just like searching through the books in our office. If you were gonna look up your last name, Hung, you would go to HU, and then you would go to the year that you thought it was. So 1963, you go down, and then you find Hung, and then you're like, oh, Michelle, okay, there we go, and then you know that it's going to be on book 236, page 97, and then there's a little drop down with the book and the page number, and you pull that, and then it pulls up a PDF image of the exact page that you were looking for.
Okay, so then that gets me to my next question. So if you do this and you go this route and it's on the website, then are you not letting people in the office, or are we then going to, nobody's touching the books? Is that what's going to happen?
Well, they still have to be publicly accessible. But yeah, when they come in, we will have the kiosk set up and assist them to utilize the computer. But
That was my next
it's
question.
It's not 100%.
Okay.
You know, any of these vendors that do the images are gonna tell you, you know, you may have that picture, 1 or 2, 3, you know, whatever it is, 1%, 10% that gets through, that we would have to go back to that book, and that's what our office staff does now. If somebody finds something online, like this is illegible, we can't read this, it's darkened out, we go to the book or the microfilm, and we're able to pull whatever has the best copy available, and then we replace that image online with it, so.
So, and then 2 years ago, you had the remodel done. Mike, I know you came into the remodel just being finished.
Right.
So are we going to then have to do, you know, something down there to create a spot for a couple of kiosks that are spaced out properly for the ARP plan to meet their requirements?
Yes, we're looking into that as well as to what the back area would look like afterwards, because there's also in the future we have microfilm. We've looked into, so we came into the office and we were like, okay, we have microfilm, what's going on with this? And then we discovered after doing more research that we do need microfilm. It is one of the only true permanent record types. Like paper, yes, you do have paper that lasts 200 years, those kind of things, but when you have microfilm, if in 200-300 years we don't have the same file systems and that kind of thing, microfilm is literally a piece of film. All you need to read it is something to magnify it and a light source. So
Fascinating, isn't it?
yes,
You wouldn't think that'd be the case, but.
yeah.
And that project would, you know, this book scanning project that we want done is just the tip of what needs to happen. We came in, we did an audit on our microfilm, and we found an audit that was done in '03, and my audit and the one that was done in '03 mimicked each other. The current storage for our microfilm isn't satisfactory, so there would be, down the line, we'd be looking at budgeting through our through the funds to try and make a new climate-controlled room for that microfilm.
Yeah, it's really sensitive to temperature and humidity, especially some of the older ones that we have. They end up developing what's called a vinegar syndrome, which makes it's named that because it starts to smell like vinegar. When the smell's not the problem is that it degrades that's when you know that the images are degrading. The newer films are better at that, especially when you keep them in temperature and humidity controlled environments.
So would that be something covered under the ARP dollars, is that temperature controlled room? And I'm just thinking about that because I know our records, I was over with Andrew last
Yeah.
week, our records center, they're literally in a drawer, in a cabinet there, kind of out in the lobby. So is that, to keep the microfilm, is that something that would be in the ARP dollars?
We believe so, but we're looking more into that. So from what we understand, it is, but we want to make sure. So we've just been consulting with companies that do it and people that understand the law better than we do to know that we can do that with it. From as far as we understand it, at this moment, it should be. We're just doing more research as of
Well,
find
and I
out.
can tell you, Dan Petticourt has been the one that's been helping us with what qualifies for the ARP dollar. So when you bring it to us, as Commissioner Moore was saying yesterday, have the plan all done, have all of your backup there, have all of your research done
Right.
on it, and if it meets the, the qualifying items that they're requiring,
Right.
In the plan, it helps us tremendously because Dan is just so busy over there. If you can
Right.
have the research done ahead of time, that would help us.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Can you just give us a quick overview about the DD-214s and working with the vets on that, so they have this identification card and have everything properly registered with you guys?
So we do that's part of the records that we do keep. They are not public record for 75 years, but things older than 75 years are technically public record. So we'll record those DD-214s, and once the DD-214 is recorded, we will provide those veteran ID cards. What we noticed, actually, Jeff, would you mind speaking more about the little ones that you were telling me about?
So in the past, veterans would come in and they would record their discharge papers, and then they would receive a miniature copy of their discharge form that they would keep in their wallet so they could use those for discounts and whatnot across the county. With that said, that had all their personal information on there, so if they lost their wallet, they lost everything with that little miniature DD-214 in their wallet. So we encourage anybody that's carrying that little DD-214, come down and get a military veteran ID. That's good for discounts around the county. You can use it for identification at the Board of Elections when you're voting. And keep all your personal information out of your wallet just in case. And with that said, we do encourage you to come down and get your discharge papers recorded, because a certified copy from us is free. You can utilize it at the VA or anywhere else. Again, if you lose it at home, unfortunately, God forbid a fire or something and it gets destroyed, we could keep it on record here at the recorder's office. So.
But I think it's important to stress it's not a public record, correct?
Yes,
Even though
exactly.
you hold it, it's not a public
record. Yeah, that's the important thing is to stress is that it's not a public record. And one other thing is, once they're recorded, you can, is if you're a veteran, you can come in and you can get yours. If you lose it and it's not recorded, you have to go through the National Archives. And they've just been so backed up, especially after the pandemic. People are taking months to get papers that they requested. And that's just because they're short-staffed and they're inundated with requests.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad the auditor came in early. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
It
Thank
was a
you.
great discussion, thank you. Okay, and next up, we have Mr. Auditor Craig Snodgrass. Welcome.
Well, hello. Hopefully, Teresa, I don't know if everybody has a copy of presentation today. It's hard to believe it's been about 8, 9 months since we did this. Do you have,
Call it up on
I
the
think you
screen.
might have to just call it up on the screen.
Russell?
okay. If not,
Just one moment, folks. We're going to get the PowerPoint up.
Yeah, thanks for meeting with us earlier than expected. We were moving through these pretty fast. I know you got a busy schedule, too.
all right, 3, 8, 4 hours.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm sure you want to go to lunch.
It's
We don't really both.
eating's overrated. I've got plenty of reserve. Okay, let's see. I guess that would be- Let's see how to forward this. Oh, there we go. Okay, I think we're ready. I hope. All right, yeah, it's hard to believe it's been about 7, 8, 9 months already since we did this the last time. Been a very busy year. I'm going to recap a little bit of some of the things that went on, and just to refresh some memories of some of the things we do actually in the auditor's office, and then roll into the budget. But again, you'll see some of the general fund related duties. Bookkeeping, we had average about 50,000 warrants a year. And this past year, we had over $769 million flow through that department. And I have a very limited staff, really, when you look at all the transactions that actually do go through. And, especially during a COVID year, last year, we were able to actually, I think, mobilize pretty quickly and do a lot of work out of the office. Everybody is back in the office, and we had a very good audit report through Auditor State's office. Recently had that finished up. So a very busy year this past year, and then what we are doing so far this year. Payroll, we have about 2,000 employees every pay, $3.5 million going out the door that we have to process, that have to make sure it's right. We've had good reports, again, through the state auditor's office, as well as we went through a OPERS audit last year, and everything was, we had a good, clean bill of health. Very proud of that. Tax settlement, people start to say, well, what does the auditor do? And these are some of the things. In the tax settlement, we touch every city, township, village by distributing the money. And that was one of the things that, we had to keep our doors open this past year. Because a lot of other political subdivisions are very reliant upon all the money and all the transactions that flow through our office. Again, you'll see we deal with 9 cities, 7 villages, 18 townships, 15 school districts, millions of dollars that are distributed. Then we also have to administer a lot of state mandated programs. Again, general fund obligations, CAUV, 5,500 parcels. We've been working on a lot of relationships and a lot of interactions with the Farm Bureau here. We have some meetings coming up with them. We're going to help out, try to do some new programs there. We have Homestead, over 21,000 recipients of Homestead. And then 2.5% owner occupancy, over 85,000 parcels. One of the things that has been added duties to our office through the state auditor's office is that they're checking to make sure that all the applications are there, everything's on file, and it's created a lot of extra work overtime on our part to check 85,000 parcels. And I know that our Auditors Association is trying to deal with the state auditor's office and as well as the state, because this is just a bigger problem, statewide. So has added quite a bit. Again, transfers, conveyances, obviously there's no secret the housing market's been on fire for years, and it really has blossomed through COVID. And if you look at this year, it's not slowed down. We just went through our, by the way, we did collect over $6 million conveyance fees, record year last year, and we're well on pace to collect over $6 million this year. That goes back to the general fund. Again, we just finished up our triennial update. I've had a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions. We sent out about 110,000 notices to residential owners of property, and we had less than 2,000 inquiries, being either in-person meetings or on phone calls. A lot of part of it is my taxes are going up, and they're taxing me out of my house. Had that discussion with the legislators. Our association hosted a legislative day down in Columbus yesterday, and met with our state senator, Manning. We had a good discussion about that, and again, it's the process. You know, we have our jobs, our mandated duties to value property. You know, unfortunately, we're given a process, a system of taxation, which we can't control, commissioners can't control. It comes out of the legislators in Columbus, and they are working on some programs, some possibilities to help alleviate some of that tax issue, but right now it's there. Also, this is a 2022 anticipated revenue that we kind of monitor from the auditor's office. I know there's many more revenue accounts that Casey receives from other departments. Certainly the big ones being all the real estate taxes. We had projected estimate about $9.8 million for general fund. And usually then that gets split between homestead rollback, but we wait to do that later. But we should get more than $10 million next year. So I think that number, we're meeting every month with Casey to go over current year revenues as well as what we'll do for the tax budget. So that number will probably go up a little bit for next year, especially with the update. And I did notice the board, I believe, is staying at 1.3 mils and 0.3 mils split on the inside millage. So with that said, then, yeah, you're looking a little bit more than 10 million. Right now we have the estimate of 9.8. And obviously the other big one is sales tax. That continues to chug along. We are definitely ahead of some paces from last year, comparable years. We're still collecting more than $1 million per 0.25% each month. So this number is at $23 million, so that again probably will go up a little bit for next year's revenue estimate. But again, there is a lot of money that is floating around out there. At some point in time, things you would anticipate would slow down a bit, but $23 million for next year's revenue estimate is very, very safe, I believe. And then you jump down to the conveyance fees, $5.5 million. If the housing market continues to go in the way it has, we'll hit 5.5 next year as well, and that number may as well be adjusted. But I think it's a good starting point. At some point in time, the market will need to adjust. It's cyclical. If you look at the history, and how long and will that go, we won't know. But right now, for the first 10 months of this year, we're still hitting record paces for sales. And then the casino revenue, 3.6 seems to be pretty consistent there as far as what we've been receiving. And so, the $46 million that I've estimated from at least my revenue accounts, I feel pretty confident of those numbers, and we should be able to bring those up a little bit next year. Which then will bring to my anticipated expenses. Nothing really has changed much in here from what I had the previous years, and I have another chart in there that will indicate that. But I did allocate for a little bit of employee raises. Again, not knowing where our negotiations for the upcoming union contracts are going, but I did build in a little bit about that. But all my other accounts, really, I've frozen from the previous budget request, which then, if you look at the next slide there where it has the requests and the received and spent, you'll see I asked for $214,000 back in 2021, and same here for 22. in the little history, the last 4 or 5 years of what we've spent. 18, the expenses were down a little bit, but I think that's because we had some purchase orders that didn't quite get in time, and then it rolled into the 19, so that's why there's a little bit of a difference on the spending, but we are averaging about $202,000, $203,000 of expenses each year, and so I'm really not asking for anything more other than what we've been able to live off of the last few years. Payroll, you'll see that with the salary increases at 2.9% from what we've requested from the previous year. And then the PRS would, the corresponding PRS. So it averages about a little less than 3% on the salary requests. So with that, open up any questions to the board.
Commissioners?
Does your association anticipate any, mandates coming down the pike that will have an impact on your department in 2022?
We had some discussions there. There's a lot of legislation being thrown around, not thrown around, but discussed that goes back and forth. There's some CAUV issues that might alleviate some printing costs, but I think it's going to be from a management side. It's going to we're going to actually be more difficult for us because we're going to have to get additional information other ways. There is some discussions about indexing possibly the homestead, so there may be some programming issues there from a computer side. There's always some new program that pops up or request that we get, but right now it's kind of quiet. In fact, the House was not there for our meetings yesterday because I guess they got sent home early for a variety of reasons. So we'll see what comes out of Columbus here real soon.
Is there anything you want to educate the public about at this time concerning property valuations and the requirements of the state for you to do so?
Well, again, we went through the triennial, and that was really basically a market analysis of sales to the value. And the state had recommended 16% across the board increase, or at least in the aggregate. Some areas did go up a little higher, others not as much. But our next reappraisal will be 2024. We're already in the process of working on that. We're gathering information and data already. It's kind of the process we're given, and hopefully if we can ever really get school funding figured out, I think a lot of the problems, a lot of the complaints that we hear will kind of subside a bit, because that is about 65% of your tax bill. And there's other states that have different programs. I hear a lot from the seniors. They're getting taxed out of their homes. And I had that conversation with Mr. Manning and some of the other legislators yesterday, and it's true. We've heard that. And I used an example where I had a couple houses on the lake. One was valued a little more than $500,000. The other one was around $700,000. A person came in and bought it for $1.5 million, flattened the houses, and rebuilt. So what did they buy? They bought the land.
That's when you know you got money. We can do that.
Well, but what it does is then it affects everybody else around them.
Right.
And then I get an elderly person that came in that lived on the lake and says, I can't afford the taxes. And I get that because it was handed down from generation to generation to her. And she's not the one, that has, maybe the corporate job or whatever the case might be. So it affects things, and people need to realize that and look at it. And so, hopefully again, through the legislators, we can get some changes to help alleviate some of these burdens. But the problem is, at the end of the day, somebody has to pay. And that's what then that's the question they have to answer, who's going to be the ones paying? So.
We still have unconstitutional school funding in Ohio.
Like that for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, right, since the 90s.
I'll get fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
lakefront, the problem with lakefront is the value of the land itself. They, right across the street's 20,000 land value. On the lake, it's 100. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where you get burned. So
It is right on the other side of the road.
I know.
And they're not making any more waterfront property. it's one of the challenges that we incur. How do you put a number on some of those things? Certainly through COVID, a lot of people thought the market would crash with COVID. It just climbed.
I know, I was so proud. I sold my house 2 months beforehand, thinking, all right. And then I went, oh my gosh, what happened? It
Yeah.
just took off.
It is, and I talk to realtors all the time. I'm talking to the title people. Their work is not slowing down. And, you wait, and I'm anxious to hear, when the interest rates, we have our investment advisory meetings that come up, and that's where you get a lot of that information. Where do we think the rates are going to go and when? Because there will be some effect, and, keep pushing it off, and you can only do that so long. So,
Thanks for coming in.
appreciate your time.
Thank you, Craig.
Please feel free to
You're
stop
20
down.
minutes, you know what? You were done 20 minutes before you even started. That's how fast you were. Tell Taleric that, because he said he could be done in 63 seconds. You beat him. You
He
were
can
done
do that.
minus 20 minutes.
Oh, I'll throw down the challenge to him.
Yeah, I would.
Thank you.
Okay, Russell, let's keep rolling, Russell, don't shut us down. We
I thought that
have,
was it.
oh no, we have the clerk's report.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I mean, next Tuesday at 11 o'clock, you're having your investment advisory. Wednesday, we will have a commissioners meeting, and Thursday, October 28th is more budget hearings.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now the motion we've all been waiting for. I move to adjourn.
I think I'll second that motion today.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hung?
Yes.
Commissioner Lundy,
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Present.